Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is a fun one as it's my annual Christmas book haul. This year, like many years in the past, I am acting as my own Santa, which honestly is a very freeing and fun ability to be able to do. That's right, I've accumulated for myself for this video a lot of books I've been wanting to buy. To me, from me, you know what I mean? So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The first book I picked up is actually a YA novel. I've seen it everywhere, and even in my IRL book club, I've had some people mention how much they enjoyed reading this series, and that book is the very popular, very beloved Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I don't read a lot of YA anymore, but the setup and synopsis of this does seem like something I would really enjoy. It has a lot to do with like weird, dangerous games and sort of a whimsical mystery at the heart of it, which in general is a combination of things I like. In this story, we follow our main character, Avery, and Avery has a plan for a better future, and that is graduate high school and get a scholarship and get out. But Avery's luck absolutely changes when a reclusive billionaire leaves Avery his entire fortune for like no apparent reason. But there is a very clear catch, and that is Avery has to move to his estate and solve a bunch of riddles, explore secret passages, and basically like unlock this mystery, and also live alongside his family that he just disinherited, including grandsons that are out to get Avery, either because they think she's a con woman or a mystery or riddle that needs to be solved itself. Again, this is a very popular series. It just sounds really fun and angsty, and I feel like it could be a good pickup for the beginning of next year. It's also a book I've been meaning to pick up for forever, so when I was at the bookstore and I saw it, I decided to finally grab it. Next book was also a bit of an impulse purchase because I actually technically already own this book, but I guess they've recently been re-released in a series of covers that have such a beautiful spine design. Like it definitely activated a bit of Gotta Catch Them All in my brain. That book is His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novik, the first book to the Temerae series by this author. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Naomi Novik's writing. I've read a lot of her fantasy installments over the years, but I've never actually read this series. Previously, they were available in like mass market paperback, which I personally don't really enjoy reading very much, but now we have them in these beautiful floppy paperbacks that again have a spine design that turns into a dragon. This series is described as both a fantastical and historical epic, which in general are two things I personally really enjoy. I think it's supposed to sort of reimagine the war and conflict between France and England, but now like dragons are involved and there are these aerial corps that are going to battle against each other, and we follow a main character that is a part of the British Army and is now being trained as a dragon rider. I'm curious about this one. I love the sort of historical influence injected within this fantasy tale. I already know I like Naomi Novik's writing quite a bit, and I feel like in general this series is pretty underrated, and I'm looking forward to sort of checking it out for myself. And also I was obviously very dazzled by these beautiful new covers. Speaking of a beautiful new cover, I also grabbed The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. This, of course, is a very lauded, very famous, very influential fantasy story that I've actually never read, which I definitely want to rectify in 2024. I also just love this illustrated cover so much. I love the colors. I also have the short story collection in this same design by the same author that came out last year, so I feel like that could be a good thing to marathon. This is said to be a poignant tale of love and loss, and it's also a quest story, and the setup of this in general is just a series of tropes that I personally enjoy so much. We follow a unicorn that leaves a magical forest and hopes to set out on a quest to try to find others of her kind. Along the way, other people join in on her quest, like unexpected individuals, and the unicorn begins to learn about life and the other people that sort of exist within this world around her. Again, this is a beloved story that has existed for many, many years. I feel like I've known about this story my whole life, and I'm honestly really, really surprised I have yet to pick it up, but I feel like it's a perfect time to change that, and when I saw this beautiful cover, it felt like it was time. Plus, it has a new introduction by Patrick Rolfes at the front, which I'm curious to read as well. So yes, I also grabbed this for myself. The next book was actually one of my 2023 most anticipated releases, and when it was nominated for a Sci-Fi Goodreads Award, it was kind of brought back to the front of my mind as a story I knew I needed to add to my shelf, and that is The Deep Sky by Yumi Kitase. And the synopsis of this book honestly sounds very, very intense, an absolute page turner, but I also feel like it's going to leave me a lot to think about as well. And this book is set on the eve of Earth's environmental collapse, and 80 elite-like students were basically selected to be Earth's future, put in a spaceship and launched into deep space to basically keep the Earth population alive with them in the future. Halfway to their new livable planet, something happens where a bomb goes off and kills 3 of the crewmates, and our main character is the only surviving witness to this incident and also is like the immediate suspect based on all the other crew members who are existing on this ship. Our main character, Asuka, already feels kind of like an outsider as she was the last picked individual and barely passed training back on Earth to be a part of this expedition, and she's also determined to figure out what actually happened during this event, but things get really intense as crew members begin to turn on one another. And I feel like this is going to be a very interesting exploration of humanity and connection, and also a deep space thriller contained to a spaceship, which in general is kind of a setup that I tend to enjoy. I feel like this is going to be like a lot and very intense, and I'm looking forward to picking it up. Next up, I have my December Book of the Month selects, which I thought we could open up together. I got 3 books in the month of December because I could not decide. And this is not sponsored, by the way. I just truly love Book of the Month. The first book I selected was a short story collection that my friend Max absolutely raved about, and that is Tomb Sweeping by Alexandra Chang. I also am obsessed with this cover. In this collection, the author probes the loyalties we have to ourselves, to strangers, to family members, in a set of stories set not only in the United States, but Asia as well, through the perspectives of a variety of people, from immigrant families to grocery store workers to guileless lab assistants. Again, I've heard really fantastic things about this, and apparently just the humanity and perspective that the author is able to capture in this apparently is just stunning. I've been kind of on a short story kick recently, so I definitely wanted to add this to my shelf and my collection. I feel like when I find a good short story collection, I think about them forever. The next book just honestly sounded so much fun and a romp, and I love a romp, and that is Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. I actually believe this is a YA fantasy novel. Again, I don't often read much in that genre, but this book just sounded way too much fun to pass up. This book is said to be full of love, found family, and like medieval humor. And this book is set in a fantasy setting hundreds of years after the events of Arthur's Round Table, but the consequences of this are still being felt to this day. And his descendant, Arthur, has been betrothed to the Princess of England since they are both young children, and they don't have very much in common, but the one thing they do have in common is that they despise each other. But in the lead up to their upcoming nuptials, they basically are spending a period of time together in the summer in Camelot. And within 24 hours, Gwen, our main character, discovers the other, Arthur, kissing a boy, and Arthur, wanting to dig into Gwen's past, discovers her diary and her love that she has for a lady at her court, and they quickly realize that they might actually make better allies than enemies. And they begin to work with one another. I think they form a friendship, and I believe they also try their hand at love within the court too. This just sounds like so much fun. It sounds like it's going to be so cute and endearing, and I love the concept and the setting as well as the influences. I've heard great things about this so far, and I feel like this could be like a perfect palate cleanser book to some of the more intense and harrowing reads I not only have in this book haul, but just like on my shelf in general. The last book I included in my December box is The Gentleman's Gambit by Evie Dunmore. This is the 4th book to a League of Extraordinary Women, which is like a historical romance series. I'm obviously a sucker for historical romance. And one thing I do enjoy about this series, like alongside the fun, steamy romance, is that Evie Dunmore does include real history and real social commentary as part of these books. And in this book, we are following the daughter of a professor within this world that we've already been introduced to, Katerina. And she dreams of not only becoming a professor at Oxford like her father, but she also wishes she could find love, despite the fact that she's really introverted and also feels like that type of connection will likely not happen for her, especially because her father is commandeering and will probably prevent both of those things from coming true. Unlikely though, she does meet her father's new colleague who has his own plans as well, and that is he's basically taken a job with Katrina's father to get close to the artifacts that the English have stolen in hopes of stealing them back and bringing them back to his own country. And I believe him and Katerina begin to grow close and form a relationship as they work together to steal these artifacts. I hear it has elements of a heist, again in combination with romance and the historical influences. It sounds like it could be a lot of fun. Obviously, I do feel like it's balancing quite a few influences here, but I have enjoyed previous books in this series that I have picked up, and I always like to have some type of historical romance on my shelf because I'm just delighted by them, so I did grab this too. The next book I grabbed, I just couldn't help myself when I saw it on the shelves of one of my favorite indie bookstores, and that is The Idiot by Elif Batuman. This book was a nominee for the Pulitzer and was actually a finalist, and in general, it is like very, very lauded. I almost accidentally bought the sequel to this, but luckily the sales rep at the bookstore stopped stopped me and pointed me in the direction of the idiot first. But reading the synopsis of this, I was honestly sold right away. First off, a lot of the lines say how absolutely funny this book is, which sounded really interesting to me. It says, the author is able to dramatize the uncertainty of life on the cusp of adulthood. The Idiot is a heroic yet self-effacing reckoning with the terror and joy of becoming a person in a world that is intoxicating as it is disquieting. This book is set in 1995, and we're introduced to our main character, Selin, who is the daughter of Turkish immigrants. She's about to start her freshman year at Harvard. She arrives on campus, she's signing up for classes she has never heard of, surrounded by a ton of new people, and almost like on accident, she begins to befriend people around her. First is her Serbian roommate. They begin to grow close, and then she also begins to almost accidentally correspond via email with an older mathematics student named Ivan. And I think through like her journey as a student in school, she has a lot of self-reflection and also begins to reckon with the concept of how she wants to become a writer. Again, I hear fantastic things about this book and I'm really curious to pick it up. A lot of my friends have read it and really enjoyed it. I also just like love the cover, like it's pink with just this rock. I need to know why. I need to understand the meaning of this. So yes, I grabbed this. Next up is another book in a box, so let's open it up together. This purchase shouldn't be too much of a surprise, and in fact, I'm very excited to be adding it to my shelf. That book is The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. Obviously, I read The Spear Cuts Through Water a few months ago. Absolutely adored it. Quickly became one of my favorite fantasy books of all time. Obviously, I needed to add that author's debut novel on my shelf, which I hope to pick up very, very soon. And reading over the synopsis of this book, I feel like this is going to be incredibly emotional, but also very, very beautiful. In this story, we're introduced to our first main character, Nia. And Nia is struggling. She is traveling through the stars, which she does for work, and decades of time have passed by over the span of only a few months for her. And she's grappling with the concept of everyone she has ever loved in her life is aging past her, and she feels very much alone. So all she really has left for herself is her work, so she throws herself headfirst into that. Until one day during her travels, she stumbles upon a lost boy. Broken by his past and where he came from, she decides to take him in. The boy does not speak, and his only form of communication is through the music he plays on his old, battered wooden flute. Nia is almost immediately drawn in by this music, and she decides to take this boy in. And from there, I believe we watch as these two travel through space together. And I feel like this is going to definitely have elements of found family, love, second chances, and just knowing Simon Jimenez's writing style, which is stunning, I just feel like this is going to be an experience that I will not forget. I think this is going to be stunning. The next book I have to show off, I actually got in a Secret Santa bookish exchange I did with my friends. And that book is The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. And this is actually one of my friend Lucy's favorite books, so I was so excited that I ended up with it. And this is said to be a towering, swashbuckling thrill of a book where, yes, we have our two main characters who are best friends living in New York City, but also apparently the third main character of this book is the city itself, which sounds really, really fun. And this story follows two young men and cousins as they venture out on a scheme to try to make money. The first main character is Joe, and he is an escape artist who flees from Europe and travels to America to stay with his cousin. And his cousin, Sammy, who lives in Brooklyn, is looking to cash in on the current American craze, which is comics. And they set out together to try to seize that American dream and ambition. I hear this book is just fantastic in every way, shape, and form. Lovable characters, a fascinating setting, and said to be like Michael Chabon's like magnus opus, filled with originality and storytelling. I really feel like I could fall in love with this book. It also won the Pulitzer Prize, so clearly a lot of people have enjoyed this too. I also just love the cover. I just feel like this could be a fantastic experience. I'm also curious if any of y'all have read it or listened to the audiobook, please let me know. But I was so excited I was able to grab this during Secret Santa. The next book I picked up is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and this is the first book to a series centering a coffee shop in Tokyo where patrons can come and actually travel back in time. There are lots of rules and stipulations in how this time travel works. Throughout this very short first installment, we follow three different characters who have three different reasons to seek time travel. We kind of get to know them, follow their journey into the past and how it impacts them into the present. It's a very quiet, beautiful, and heartwarming story, I would say. I've actually already read it. And if you want to hear my thoughts, I do have a reading vlog, but I did grab this. I see it at bookstores all the time, and I just feel like it's a super popular read. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue on, or if I do, I might just get the ebooks, but I was happy to add this book to my shelf as well. Another book I grabbed because I just feel like I keep seeing recommendations for it everywhere is The the Book of Goose by Yin Lee. This is a story that centers childhood friendship, which in general is a topic that I personally really enjoy, but the progression of the story actually takes place over a large expanse of time. And the synopsis of this book goes, Fabine is dead, and her childhood best friend Agnes receives this news in America, very far away from the French countryside where these two children meet and form their friendship, but also the place that Fabine helped Agnes escape to so many years prior. As children living in a war-ravaged town in France, they escaped into their own world together, building new lives and dreams for themselves in a way that only children can. This is also where they hatch the plan to get Agnes a new life, which Agnes does. This book is said to be full of disturbing intimacy as well as strength of will. It's on a lot of best books of the year for 2023, and I was just really intrigued by the story and synopsis of this, so I finally caved and I bought it. The next book I have to show off was actually my IRL book club pick, which I've also actually read, and that is Shark Heart by Emily Habeck. This book I feel like is super popular right now, which I can understand. It's a speculative fiction story that has a really interesting concept at the heart of it and uses that concept to explore illness and grief. But in this story, we're introduced to a couple who has just recently gotten married. However, though, their first year of marriage will actually be their last one, as the husband is unexpectedly diagnosed with a very rare condition and disorder, and that is that he will slowly transform into a great white shark. This book documents not only the illness, but the before and afters for both of these characters' lives, and the intertwining and the complexities of illness and grief, especially in relation to losing a loved one. Structurally, this book is also very, very unique, with many of the chapters not even being long than like a page and a half, some chapters only being a paragraph. The writing style, I would say, is definitely a highlight of this book, as well as just the concept of people turning into animals and the exploration of that. It's a very intriguing story. It definitely provides a lot of different things to chat about in a book club setting or just in your everyday life, but I did buy this because I had to read it, and I did read it. The next book I grabbed sounds absolutely strange, which is one of the reasons why it really called out to me, and that is Edith Holler by Edward Carey. This book is full of so many incredible illustrations, and the setup and synopsis of this sounds so weird, but it's said to be kind of like a modern fable, particularly centering a woman who's trying to escape the control of her family. But this book is set in 1901 and follows our main character, Edith Holler, and she has lived and grown up in a theater her entire life, and she's been told by her father if she ever sets foot outside of this theater, the theater will quite literally crumble before their eyes, so she can never leave. Everything she knows about the world is through the stage and the stories that she sees unfold through the actors and the plays that they put on. Edith herself begins to write her own play about her own experience, but also a secret that she has discovered, but everything is sort of turned upside down. Her father gets engaged to a very sinister woman, and she feels like it's up to her to save him from this fate. This book is super weird. I feel like it's often described as like a story about a play. Like Edith is our main character, but she's also the main character of her own story that she's writing. It feels like a very peculiar experience, which I love, and I think that accompanying with these very strange illustrations that are occurring throughout the entire thing, I feel like this could be a book I would really enjoy. Like, I love a story within a story, especially one that has a lot of sinister whimsy to it, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I saw this and I immediately knew I wanted to pick it up. Next up, I have a beautiful edition of a book. I am a sucker to the stunning UK editions, I won't lie. So I ended up buying this off of Blackwell's. It's a very popular release, and I'm so excited to finally have it in my hands. That is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I mean, look at this book. The US edition is also pretty in my opinion, but nothing beats the UK hardcover edition. So I'm very happy. I mean, look at this. Look at this. I'm very happy, and it was worth the shipping wait for this arrive at my house. But based on the reviews and the synopsis of this book, I feel like I'm going to absolutely love this. It sounds lyrical and strange and full of love and betrayal, all of the things I just personally adore so much. And in this story, we're following our main character, Evelyn, and Evelyn has always believed in happily ever after until the love of her life is now marrying another. And Evelyn will do anything to prevent this from happening, so she decides to make a deal with the Prince of Hearts. And she basically bargains with him that she will give him 3 kisses at any time in any place if he will help her win over the love of her life. But she quickly realizes that bartering with an immortal is not as straightforward as she would have expected obviously, so things quickly get complicated from there, and that's really all the synopsis says. I truly feel like this book is going to be written like an exquisite fairy tale, luscious and lovely writing. Obviously, love being at the heart of the story and at the center of the narrative really calls out to me too. I just feel like this could just be like a very endearing tale and one I could truly fall in love with myself. So yes, I grabbed the UK edition because it was stunning, and I'm so happy to be adding it to my shelf. Next two books I'm going to show off are actually gifts from Clay. We did our surprise book haul and unboxing that we do every year, and these are two of the books he selected for that, and I am in love with both of them. The first is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This is another winner of the Pulitzer Prize and a book I feel like I'm seeing absolutely everywhere. This is said to be a modern reinterpretation of the classic tale of David Copperfield, but instead of taking place in England, this actually takes place in Appalachia. And in this story, we are set to experience a plot that never pauses for breath. We follow a young, charismatic boy who has a knack for survival, growing up in a trailer with his mother. We watch him as he struggles to make a life and a place for himself in a country that not only often ignores the rural parts of our country, but also the poor parts of our country. And this story is said to speak to a new generation of lost boys and is said to be a new epic, kind of updated for the current modern times. I'm very curious about this book. I've also heard that you don't need to have read David Copperfield before picking this book up. I'm sure it enhances the experience, but a lot of people have said that they've read and enjoyed this without having read that novel, which is one of the reasons why I hadn't read this yet, but now that I know that, I think I'm just going to jump into this soon. But yes, I'm so happy to add this to my shelf. The next book he picked up for me is an alternate history book, which is always one of my favorites to read, and that is Let the Dead Bury the Dead by Alison Epstein. This is actually an alternate history book set in Imperial Russia, centers revolution and upheaval, and in general, just a political time period I'm personally really interested in. And this book is set in 1812, and after just recently having defeated the forces of Napoleon, Russia during this time period is experiencing a lot. In it, we follow our main character who was a part of the army, and she's now returning back to the capital. She has connections with like the imperial family, and there's also a mysterious figure that arrives in town around the same time. Our main character suspects that this person is of supernatural descent, if you will, but no one believes or considers her advice, and this person becomes very enmeshed in the politics with the imperial family, and it really complicates things within the city of St. Petersburg, and things also begin to heat up from a revolutionary point of view. This book says to combine elements of political intrigue with a dash of magic, which I always love to see, with a cast of characters that are super rootable. I'm really curious about not only the time period this book is set in, but how this book can kind of unfurl, so I'm really excited to add this to my shelf, and I feel like this was a perfect pickup by Clay. Alrighty folks, we have done it. We have reached the final book I'm going to show off in this haul, and I believe this might actually be publisher mail, so we will open it together. Ooh. Okay, I'm actually so excited to have this book in my hands, and that is Bittersweet in the Hollow by Kate Persall. This book has a lot of things I personally really enjoy. First, a small town with complicated relationships existing within it, surrounded by a magical forest that never forgets, despite the fact that if you go into the forest for too long, you yourself might forget what happens within it, and a main character that comes from a family and a line of women that all have some type of strange magical ability. And Lyndon, our main character's magical ability is to be able to taste people's feelings, which has really complicated her life, especially with a cute boy in town named Cole, who she had a falling out with a year ago. But after more young women have started to go missing within this town, it's up to Lyndon to try to figure out what in the world is going on. I love a small town bookish setting with a mysterious forest that has magical elements to it, as well as a dash of magic amongst our characters and romance. Say no more. I'm very interested in this book, and I absolutely love the cover. Alrighty guys, that is my Christmas book haul. Please let me down below which book I should get to first, as I would love to know. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!